Gentlemen, welcome to the 2018 Otter Tail County Sheriff Candidate Debate here at City Hall. We're about to get underway, but before we do, I'd ask if you'd all join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here in attendance tonight. I can say that we're surprised and thrilled by the turnout here. This is great to see. It's fantastic to see so many people willing to learn more about our candidates for elected office and take this opportunity. I want to take a quick opportunity to thank this evening's sponsors, the Fergus Falls Daily Journal and PEG Access Television. Both organizations have committed their time, staff, and resources to help make this event possible, and we appreciate that. I also want to thank City Hall for affording us this ideal venue here tonight, although maybe we could have done with a few more chairs. With all that having been said, I'd like to introduce to you your candidates for Otter Tail County Sheriff in 2018. Candidates, I'd ask that as your name is introduced, you'd please stand so the audience can get to know you. From left to right, firstly, we have Chief Deputy of the Otter Tail County Sheriff's Office, Barry Fitzgibbons. If you'd join me in a round of applause for Mr. Fitzgibbons. Second, we have Chief of Police for the City of Perham, Jason Hobie. And Chief of Public Safety for the City of Fergus Falls, Mr. Kyle Bergeron. In a moment, we'll allow each of the candidates to provide a personal introduction to themselves and to their campaigns, but first, a brief introduction of the rules and etiquette for the debate tonight. As the conversation begins, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Then, questions in the debate proper will be underway. My name is R.C. Drews, and it will be my privilege to serve as moderator throughout the proceedings tonight. To the audience members, I would ask that you refrain from applause, cheering, and other shows of preference outside of the candidate introductions and the event's conclusion. We want to ensure that we get through as many questions as possible as we can in the 1 hour that we've allotted for this event. And we also want to ensure a respectful atmosphere for all of the candidates tonight. To our candidates and the audience, a reminder of the process tonight. During the question phase of the debate, responses will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. At the 1 minute mark, our official up front will display a yellow card indicating that fewer than 60 seconds remain. When the stopwatch reaches 10 seconds left, he will hold up a red card. Should a candidate exceed the maximum time limit, it will be my responsibility at that time to interrupt out of fairness for the other candidates. Candidates, in the event that you wish to make a rebuttal following another speaker's statement, I would ask just that you would raise your hand, gain eye contact with myself, and if the divergence seems appropriate, I will, as soon as the speaking candidate concludes, permit the rebuttal and allow 30 seconds for a counterstatement. Finally, I would like to remind our candidates and myself to speak loudly and enunciate clearly. The microphones in front of you are unidirectional, meaning that they will only pick up responses if they are facing you directly. So please ensure that your microphones are facing accordingly for the sake of the audience and for the sake of those watching us via PEG Access Television. Without further ado, we'll now hear an introduction from each of the candidates, beginning again from left to right. Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons, you have 3 minutes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience, my training, and what I have to offer for Otter Tail County. A little introduction about myself. My family moved up here in 1998 from the Twin Cities. We wanted to raise our family in the rural area, get out of the Twin Cities. We lived in Underwood for 19 years, recently moved to the city of Vining. My wife works in physical therapy at the Pioneer Home, and I've got 2 daughters, one adult daughter who's completed college and is now in the workforce, and I also have another daughter who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. She's taking her senior pictures, so very excited about that. Experience-wise, I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 18 years, and that's afforded me many opportunities. I've been very grateful. I've worked in patrol, where I started my career with the Sheriff's Office, advanced through patrol to the lieutenant position. I oversaw the patrol division, which included K-9, civil process, as well as patrol deputies. I was also responsible for the budget for vehicles and equipment, as well as training and scheduling as well. I then moved over into the investigation unit, where I oversaw the detectives. And that position also, along with the investigation unit, my responsibilities included overseeing court security, as well as our 911 dispatch center. And I think that really gave me a better understanding of the department as a whole. As I was doing that, I've also been involved in a lot of other things. I've been a trainer for the department, use of force, taser, multiple other disciplines. And in 2016, I was appointed chief deputy, which oversees the operations of the entire sheriff's office, to include the detention center. We've got great people in place managing them, but my position was overseeing the whole department, to include policies, budgets, hiring, discipline, and multiple other things. As far as what I bring to the table for the sheriff's office, we've got a great department, a lot of great people, and I want to see that continue. And I want to be part of the conversations for our drug problem. I want to be part of the conversations for our mental health problem. Our officers and officers across the U.S. are dealing with that every day, and I think it's important that we address that. Short on time, but also I'd like to work on school safety, and those are going to be my priorities as your next sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons. Chief Hobie, you have 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Jason Hobie. I am currently the police chief in Perham. I pretty much grew up or spent most of my life in East Otter Tail County, or the northeast part. I grew up in Perham and attended high school there, graduated, went off to college to get a degree in law enforcement. I was fortunate enough to come back, and I started my career in the city of New York Mills. That brought me back kind of home to where I have some family and friends, and it helped me build relationships in those communities because I knew many of those people already. After working in New York Mills for a while, I was promoted to police chief there. That was in 2008. Finding myself in a new position, I did what I normally do. I seek out information, advice, and guidance and training. So I attended multiple different trainings to get me ready for that position, and so I could do a good job for the city. I attended training as far as Chief Law Enforcement Officer in Command School. I went to the Minnesota BCA, which is our state police organization. They have many different trainings. Attended training for supervision and management. And so I developed myself into that position so I could become a good police chief and a good administrator for that department. Also, my leadership style came out when I became a police chief in New York Mills. I was in a small town. There weren't that many officers, so I realized early on that we needed to work with the communities to find out what their issues are, what the concerns are, and then work together to find solutions. The police department can't do it alone. And so I developed those relationships. As I said, I grew up in this county, so it was easier to do, or it helped facilitate building those relationships. But I learned that early on. So when I became police chief of Perham in 2010, I used that to build, I used my leadership style, which is building relationships, being out there, being visible, working with my staff to provide a service to the community of Perham as well in the surrounding area. If elected sheriff, I want to use what I've learned in my current position. I have 10 years of police chief experience. I believe that I have a strong leadership style that will be able to guide, and my experience and skills will be able to help those, and we can provide a service to the county that is what everybody here deserves. I want to build relationships throughout the county. I want to work with the community, and I want to push on accountability as well. I think when it comes to public office, we need to be accountable to the public. We need to show what we're doing and why we're doing. And so as sheriff, I want to bring some of that back. I want to work with you all, and I want to tell you why it is we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you, Chief Hobie. Chief Berggren, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this event tonight, and I thank everybody who's in attendance tonight for coming out and listening to all 3 of us. I can't say enough good things about both Barry and Jason. I've known them for many years, and I think Otter Tail County, regardless of how the election turns out, will be doing well in the sheriff's office. I grew up in Detroit Lakes. I started with the Fergus Falls Police Department back in 1995. Prior to that, I worked in the Becker County Sheriff's Office, doing mostly boat and water patrol. Education, I've had a lot of great educational experiences. Graduated from the University of Minnesota Duluth with a degree in criminology. Went on to North Dakota State University, did 2 years of graduate school studying behavioral science. Other parts of my education outside of academia include going to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia, completing their criminal investigator training course, as well as being a graduate from the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. So education has been a very important part of my life, a very important part of my career. I believe in that philosophy of lifelong learning. I believe that what you learn not only in a classroom but out in the field is things that you need to bring back to your agency and share with your people. And I think that's something that I have done. Other parts of my career, again, I've had some real interesting opportunities, being a police officer in St. Paul, a special agent with the Secret Service. I've been the police chief here for 8 years. I've been in drug task force positions, investigative positions, different leadership roles. As sheriff, my big thing, I'm already the chief now. It's not really about being promoted. This is about service to the public. And for me, it is about change. Brian and I are very good friends, and it's not so much a change from him as it is acknowledging what's going on in our county and in our communities and how they are changing. And we have to be very progressive. We have to be very proactive in our policing tactics to ensure that we are providing a safe place for all the residents to live.
Thank you, Chief Berggren. We'll now begin the debate proper. As a reminder, our candidates will each be allowed 2 minutes to respond to the question asked. The order of questioning will rotate one candidate to the right after each question in the interest of fairness. Again, we ask that the audience withhold from applause during this portion of the debate. Question number 1, and for our first question, we'll look to you, Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons. For more than a decade, the Sheriff's Office has operated under the careful watch of Sheriff Brian Schluter. With new leaders, however, comes new leadership. If elected sheriff, what is, in your opinion, the most important policy change that you would effect?
Thank you for that question. So what is the most important policy change? You know, I think if we had a lot of issues going on in the sheriff's office, that would be really easy to cover. Things are going really well. Our staff is very well trained, very professional. We're fortunate to have the equipment that we need. So as far as a policy change, I don't have there's no big policy changes that I foresee. I seek improvement. You know, each and every day we handle different situations and we learn from them. Critical incidents, we have an after-action debrief, and those are important because that's where we learn what went right and what went wrong. And I think it's important to keep doing that. And just, you know, like Kyle had mentioned, he's right in being progressive and being proactive. And I've always been an advocate for that, to get out there with the public, engage, prevent, and enforce. So no big policy changes, just continue the great service that I feel we provide now. Thank you.
Chief Hobie, same question.
To answer that question, being on the outside of the sheriff's office, I know procedures and certain policies that they have, but of course I am not privy to all of them. What I would do to make a change, whether this be policy or procedure-wise, is look at our coverage in the county. I would look at, are we providing the best service we can with what we're doing currently? And if that's the case, then, you know, that's the case. If not, then I would look to change that to provide a better service, to be, like the other two candidates were saying, is being proactive out there. We can't do that if we're not utilizing the assets we have to their best potential. And so that's one of the things that I would look at right away is, are we doing the best we can with what we have? Moving forward from that, I would start to analyze the department as a whole. Are we doing the best we can in all our departments? And that's by talking with the people there, looking what past practice has been, looking at where we need to be with the changes that are going on. There's changes to law, there's changes to communities. You know, county has communities that are 60 miles apart, 65 miles, 70 miles, you know, we have communities that are pretty far apart. So we need to assess, are we doing what's right for everybody in this county and how we can best do that.
Chief Berggren, we turn to you with the same question.
Sure. I guess I would differ a little bit from some of the other candidates. I truly do believe that there needs to be quite a few changes within the organization. And it's not so much about the people. We have great people within the sheriff's office, both sworn and non-sworn staff. I think the changes that need to be made are really being driven by what we are experiencing, as I said before, in our communities. It's not just mental health issues and chemical dependency issues, but it really boils down to quality of life issues. So I think it is important to look at the delivery of service. That's been one of my main talking points throughout, is that we have to make sure that we have adequate staffing out on the road to serve the public, but it's also to ensure officer safety. We ask a lot out of these men and women that go out and patrol our county, and we have to make sure that they have the adequate resources to safely handle some of these issues that we're experiencing. And it is, I mean, you just go back and look at the headlines of the last few years. Our communities are changing. The other one is the jail. It's a huge issue. Our jail staff has been burdened with dealing with mental health issues and dealing with chemical dependency issues. I've stated since the very beginning that the closure of the regional treatment center is greatly to due to that, as well as closure of our detox facilities. So I think as sheriff, you certainly have to advocate to these other agencies that we have to have better resources for these people, and that we have to make sure that we are supporting our staff and giving them the resources and support they need as well.
Thank you. A 2015 report from the Department of Public Safety showed that during that same year, alcohol-related traffic accidents in Otter Tail County resulted in expenses that exceeded $4.2 million. Under your leadership, candidates, how will Otter Tail County reduce that financial burden and enhance the safety of local roadways? Chief Hobie, we look to you first.
Well, those statistics are actually well known to me. I'm alcohol server awareness trainer in the city of Perham. I also provide that service for most of the northeast side of the county, whoever needs it. And what that does is it just educates staff on serving alcohol to people and trying to bring the problem, trying to bring the problem to light for them so that we can try to avoid some of that on the road. The other things that we do currently and that I would continue to support is the involvement with the Toward Zero Death Grant is what we use currently. That is providing additional officers on the road to enforce those things such as DWIs. And so we can keep the road safer. The extra enforcement, obviously education is key, and that's where that alcohol server awareness training comes in, starting from the beginning. When the education fails and somebody still makes the choice to drink and drive, that's when enforcement comes in. And so the state actually gives grant dollars to provide extra patrol. And again, like I said, I've been involved with many of the places in my current community on finding out best ways to do things. We've tried different programs, supported different programs for safe rides and things like that. I think we need to keep working on the education piece, starting from the beginning. But I do also believe that enforcement piece needs to be there as well. I think when you combine those two and make this problem more apparent to everybody, I think we can start to bring those numbers down.
Thank you, sir. Chief Berggren.
I think to kind of piggyback off of what Hobie said, I think our Safe Communities Coalition has done a lot of great work in the education. They've also done a lot of good work in getting rides, designated driver services out into the rural areas. That was one of the hard parts of living in a rural county. Our MAD group has done a phenomenal job with victim impact panels. But I do believe it goes back to enforcement as well. One of the things that I've noted over the years is that we're seeing more daytime DWIs. Yet we can't get grant funding out of St. Paul or Washington for daytime DWI patrols because so much of what they do is dictated by statistics. And I'm very much a firm believer in local control. We know what's going on in our communities, and we have to focus our resources to address the issues that we are experiencing, not necessarily what they might be experiencing in St. Paul. The other thing is I've been involved with Otter Tail County DWI Court since its inception. I was one of the founding members. I continue to be part of that steering committee. And I think that we need to expand DWI Court. It is not for everybody, but I do believe that we have seen some successes through the utilization of the DWI Court.
Thank you. And Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons.
Going to sound like a broken record because, you know, a lot of what they're saying is my view as well. You know, the enforcement piece is, you know, very important. And, you know, as Kyle mentioned, you know, daytime DWIs are just as real as the after-hours DWIs. You know, and along with that, we got to remember that DWIs aren't just alcohol anymore. A lot more DWIs these days are controlled substances. I think it's important to train all our staff and keep them updated on all our DWI laws regarding alcohol and controlled substances. But the Towards Zero Death, again, we're part of that as well, trying to be proactive in the prevention piece as well. You know, talking to our establishments, and we're part of the server training as well. And I think we're doing a pretty good job trying to be proactive and getting out there and talking to our establishments. And they're working really hard, but it's still these people, you know, are making that decision to get behind the wheel. And these are people that are living within our communities that are being affected by this. You know, well, in the summer we'll go up to 200,000 to 300 people for 300,000 for a population due to the lakes, but yet it seems like more and more it's our locals that are dying as a result of the choices they make and driving impaired. So as your sheriff, I will continue to be proactive in DWI enforcement and also work in the prevention piece too. If we can stop it, that's our goal. None of us want to respond to a traffic crash as a result of that. And you know, we've got a huge county and we can't be everywhere all the time, but we work really hard and try to reduce that number each year. So thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. On Sunday afternoon, an alleged kidnapping and sexual assault within Otter Tail County came as a shock to many residents, and investigation into that matter continues today. But in a press release from the Sheriff's Office, authorities credit a member of the public, a firefighter, with locating the vehicle, which ultimately led to the return of the victim to her family and the suspect to jail. Effective communication to the public during major events has become faster and more important than ever in the era of social media. Without commenting on that specific incident, what steps would your agency take to ensure that important information is relayed efficiently and appropriately to the public and members of the media? Chief Berggren, I'll ask you first.
Sure. You know, I think communication is something that we can always improve on. It's always changing on how we communicate. You know, our office has had social media for, gosh, 5, 6 or more years. We have several thousand followers, and that has been very advantageous to our agency is the use of social media. Throughout the years, we've used a number of different programs. Currently, we use Code Red, which is through Otter Tail County Emergency Management. Prior to Code Red, it was Mirror 3. You know, our agency unfortunately had experienced another incident like this where we contacted the state to issue an Amber Alert. So again, we also have the ability to do cable TV interrupts. From time to time, you might get a message while you're watching TV or through what was, or now latent broadcasting, if you're listening to the radio, of an interrupt where we're trying to give out a message about a missing person or about some type of incident. So we really try hard to use a variety of sources. That includes the media, includes non-traditional means, and includes social media. And we've been invested in that for quite some time. And we're always looking for what's the next means of communicating And again, it's hard with our ever-changing technology is what's going to catch on and what's going to fade away.
Thank you. Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons?
Yeah, communication is always key. You know, we're only as good as the people that we're working with, and you are our eyes a lot of the time. You know, again, we're all talking the same thing. Code Red, the county uses Code Red. Whether it's a weather event or a critical incident or just information that the public needs, we're able to send that out from our dispatch center, or our emergency manager can give you that information right to your phone, so you get that in a timely manner. Social media, you know, our sheriff's office does not have a Facebook page. That's in the works, but our county has a Facebook page, and we've been using that. We've tried to be more proactive, and I've seen really positive things from that, from just public information, you know, what's going on in the sheriff's office or what's going on countywide, to the incident that you spoke about this weekend. You know, we were struggling in a situation like that because time is very critical, and we're working diligently. So the more people that we can have assist us, the better. So as your sheriff, I'm going to continue to do that and work on communication. We have great partnerships with our radio, with our newspapers, and the regional outlets as well. And I think that's real important, and we'll continue to do that. And again, social media plays a big part too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chief Hobie?
You know, it's we do talk about a lot of the same thing, but I go back to what I talked about of building relationships and working with the community, because that is also key of knowing who the people are that, I'm sorry, I keep doing that, who the people are that can get that message out there. I make it a point to develop a partnership with our local reporters or the radio, so I know who it is, who I can contact, and they know me. Most often I give them my cell phone number in case something comes up, and I have theirs. That Code Red program is something that is very key to getting information out there very quickly. We just used that the other day in Perham. You can select an area, and it puts out a call to tell people information that they need to know right now. And so building on what we already have with Code Red would be a priority for me. It can go to emails, it can go to cell phones, it can do home phones, text messages. That information can be sent to areas, letting people know right away. And so building those relationships with the people behind all of this, and then also working with the technology to try to enhance that. Social media too has a pretty strong place with everybody re-sending something off once they get it. That can get a lot of information out very quickly. The problem can be, or the challenge can be, is the information accurate as it's getting re-sent? So having those solid relationships, partnerships with people you know can get accurate and quick information out is what I would be working towards, and then enhancing that.
Thank you, gentlemen. One of the great hurdles for anyone in law enforcement is the need to think quickly during difficult situations. For my next 3 questions, I will address each candidate individually, asking one question of each that will look at the potential weak points of your campaign and ask you to defend your platform. Maintaining our rotation, I believe you, Chief Berggren, are up first. Chief Berggren, much of your campaigning is focused on promoting your education and your experience, and you've worked with large organizations such as the St. Paul Police Department and the Secret Service, as you've mentioned. But Otter Tail County isn't made up of major metropolitan centers. It's comprised of cities like Dent, Earhart, Dalton, and New York Mills. How will you be able to understand the needs of cities with a population under 1,000 people? And will your background transfer?
Sure. That's a very good question. You know, I think a lot of it, you know, goes back to my upbringing. I was raised in the lakes area, grew up in Detroit Lakes, spent a lot of time on the lakes around Fergus and Perham. I mean, I think that's one of the key things about providing good law enforcement services is having an understanding of the communities you serve. You know, having been raised in these communities, I think I understand what's going on. I think the strength of going out and experiencing things in metropolitan areas is that you see what happens in these major metro areas, and eventually it's going to make its way up here. And I think that that's what we're experiencing now. So I think it's kind of a win-win in the sense that having been raised in this area, you understand the values and what goes on in our communities, but you also have you know, vast knowledge of what policing and the issues in policing are like in metropolitan areas. The other thing is, you know, 19 years of my 25-year career has been, you know, here in Fergus Falls. 8 years as the chief. I think I have a pretty good handle on what our community needs are. They're ever changing. I think as chief, you have to be constantly weighing, are we being too strong in traffic enforcement? Do we need to step something up? You know, what drugs are the current trend? You constantly have to be evaluating what issues are affecting our community and trying to be proactive in addressing those issues. And I think I have that experience to do it.
Thank you, sir. Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons, in your campaigning efforts, you've been quick to point out that you've spent your entire career with the Otter Tail County Sheriff's Office. Meanwhile, both of your competing candidates cite a multi-agency background. Does the fact that you've only worked for one agency limit your experience, and if not, why not?
Good question, and you know, I don't think it is detrimental that I've worked for this agency for 18 years. I think it is, you know, I think it's a benefit. I've been exposed to a lot of different things, and I've had a lot of outside training as well to enhance the experience I have with the Sheriff's Office. You know, I went through the BCA management course, completed that and received a certificate. I also was part of the FBI National Academy, a 10-week course in Quantico that covered multi-areas from leadership to you know, procedures and whatnot. It covered a vast amount of information in them 10 weeks. So do I think it's detrimental that I've only served for Otter Tail County? Absolutely not. I've had the opportunity to build relationships throughout the whole county, you know, from like you talked, the small areas of Fergus to Dent, to Fergus Falls and Battle Lake and Parkers and all the other areas. And with that, I've seen how our communities react to different things and how the needs are changing. And being in the office, in the Sheriff's Office now, I know what assets we have and what assets maybe we need that the communities are looking for. So I will take the experience that I have, both through my professional career and my personal career, my personal life, and use them to make the Sheriff's Office even better than it already is. And them relationships through my 18 years are critical to doing that, as well as my background and my experience.
Thank you, sir. Chief Hobie, despite your 15 years of serving in law enforcement, you are the youngest candidate seeking the office of sheriff. They say that with age comes wisdom. Does your young age put you at a disadvantage in this election? And if not, why not?
I don't think it does. I've been a police chief for 10 years. That is the majority of my career. I did start out as a patrol officer in New York Mills. I gained experience. I moved onto a day position. At the time, our department shared a chief with another department, so I gained administration experience through that. Then after becoming chief, I expanded my knowledge through training and asking the wisdom of others. I'm not a person that sits there and says, I know everything about this job, and I never will. But I do know who to go to ask the question who would know the answer. So I'm a person that is continually learning, looking for the wisdom of others, and building my own leadership style. I think at this point, I have gotten to where my leadership style is going to be, and that is working with my people, and that is leading from the front by being there with them. As far as age being a detriment to my ability to run this department, I think it gives me a drive to do the things I said I was going to do. I want to do what I'm saying I'm going to do, and I think I have that drive to do it.
Thank you, sir. So with that, we'll conclude the questions from myself, and we'll transition to questions received from the public. In the last 2 weeks, the Daily Journal has solicited questions from county residents to be asked during tonight's events, and I've made my best effort to sort through those submissions and select a handful to present tonight. To those that submitted the questions, whether they are asked tonight or not, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you for taking the time to send your emails, your phone calls, and your Facebook messages. Returning to our earlier format, these questions will be for all 3 candidates, and the same time restrictions will remain in effect. As the elected official overseeing a county-wide agency, the sheriff's role has an impact on dozens, if not more, of public encounters every day. How will you, if elected, ensure that anyone interacting with representatives of the Otter Tail County Sheriff's Office will be treated fairly and equally? Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons, I believe you are first.
Thank you. You know, that's something that that all of us strive for, the professionalism. One of the cores of our sheriff's office is respect and integrity. And you know, we have training, we have expectations, we have accountability. None of our officers will allow disrespect or mistreatment, and they are held accountable. As we move forward, as you know, you see it every day in the spotlight of an officer who's perceived to be doing something wrong. We need to remember that there's over 900,000 officers on the street every day, and we're only seeing a handful of them. I'm very proud of each and every officer that we have, sworn and non-sworn, and how they treat the public and interact with the public. They take pride in their job, and what they want to do is provide the best service possible. And as your sheriff, I'm going to continue to hold that standard high through training, through just expectations and the culture of the department. You know, we deal with people who, believe it or not, don't always want to see us, and you know, it's our job to stay professional and to de-escalate and to get that situation at a reasonable level where we can come to some sort of mediation conclusion. You know, whether it's an arrest, whether it's separating people, whether it's getting someone to a hospital or services that they need. It's up to us to control that environment and make sure that we do it safely and responsibly and with respect. Again, we tell our officers, you know, treat that person like it's your mother. How would you want your mother treated? So we are going to continue that and work hard to, you know, keep our professionalism where it needs to be.
Thank you. Chief Hobie, same question.
I think when it comes to answering that question, you have to start with the leadership of a department. The leadership style or the law enforcement style of that leader is what's going to filter down into the patrol officers and everyone else. If you have a leader that is treating people with respect, being fair with people, and doing what they're supposed to be doing, that standard will become the normal for the department. I've worked my career to do that. Fairness is one of the things that I actually believe in the most. A fair person will treat people with respect. A fair person will do their job without bias. A fair person will take an account to everything that's going on and do what they need to do and be professional. I've always pushed that as being one of my main points of when I am out there working. And as a leader, I think it's your responsibility to bring that sense of fairness or respect or integrity down to your staff. An effective leader can do that by being out there and leading from the front. They can show the staff what they expect by doing it themselves. I currently do that still. I am out taking calls, I am out running traffic, I am doing those things still because I think it is important to show what my expectations are. If something does happen to where there is an issue, addressing it and being accountable for it is something that I also believe in. You don't want to sweep something under the rug just because it might be ugly. You need to account to all of you what we're doing out here because we're essentially working for you. And once a mistake is made or something like that, when we're accountable, we're going to look into it, we're going to handle it, and we're going to learn from it. And then we can be a better department for it.
Thank you. Chief Berggren, your response.
Sure. I kind of echo that in that my belief is accountability starts at the top and it makes its way down. At the end of the day, I've always said that ultimately I am responsible as the chief of police for every action of every officer out there. And I think that starts with the hiring process. You have to hire quality people. I think we've done an excellent job in finding some of the most highly qualified individuals that are out there. I think the department is very much a family-oriented, very much a team-oriented environment in Fergus Falls. And I think that that's important, in that when an officer does something, that it's not just maybe a black mark for him, but it's a black mark for the organization. So I think the officers do take a lot of pride in the organization as a whole, and they themselves kind of police to make sure that they're doing the best that they can do. I'm not saying that we're perfect. There are definitely times that we don't deliver the level of service that we should, but as Jason indicated, those are the times that you have to step up and admit, yeah, this could have gone better, and apologize for that. But it's a tough job for these men and women that are out there. A lot of times they just have a few seconds to make decisions, and they are dealing with some of the most difficult problems in our society, and yet there's this expectation on them that somehow that they're supposed to get there and solve the problem within a matter of minutes.
Thank you, sir. Our second question from the public. Chemical and substance abuse remains an ongoing challenge to both the criminal and judicial systems, which isn't to mention the impact on everyday citizens. Describe an instrumental role you've played in the so-called war on drugs. Chief Hobie, we'll look to you first.
So, when it comes to the war on drugs, if that's what you want to call it, we have been part of the Otter Tail County Task Force, basically, but we also have done our own investigations and working with people to limit some of that in the community. And again, knowledge is where we can make a difference, and that is relying on, information to come in and then act on it. Also, I think when you talk about drug abuse and things like that, it kind of can coincide with dealing with somebody who's in a mental health crisis. And something I've done in my career that actually was one of the most beneficial trainings was become a crisis intervention team member. That is a training where it helps you deal with somebody who is in a mental health crisis. That translates back over to dealing or helping somebody who is using or is going to or has. And so I think it's being able to understand the problem and then working with the public, with people, to actually find out the information and then move forward with it. Enforcement enough, it is a challenge. It really is. There are quite a bit of a problem there, but I think if we work together and agencies work together and we can build that cooperation with the public and our other agencies, we can actually do a bit more than what we currently are.
Thank you. Chief Berggren.
I think the drug problem is a big issue. I think we need to look at it in a variety of different ways. It seems too often that we either want to just talk about rehabilitation for people, or we want to talk just about enforcement. We have to have a variety of solutions. Personally, I spent several years on the drug task force. I've executed search warrants throughout this county, throughout a 9-county region surrounding our area. I can't tell you how many search warrants. It's probably worked close to 100 or more cases. And I truly believe our role as law enforcement is enforcement. And we get calls regularly from people who are living next to homes where drug sales or drug abuse is occurring. It affects our children. It affects our families. And I think we as law enforcement, that's our role is to go out there and enforce those drug laws. I also understand as law enforcement, we need to partner with other agencies. Like I said before, I've been involved with DWI court. I think we need to expand that to deal with people that have chemical dependency issues. But again, it's providing an array of services. It has to be a joint effort with public health, human services, our court systems. It's not just simply a problem that law enforcement in and of itself is going to solve.
Thank you. And Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons.
Yeah, to expand a little bit on what's already been said, which I agree with, we you know, there's a couple different phases of that. We've got the prevention and the enforcement and the rehabilitation. And while, you know, law enforcement should be responsible for enforcing those laws, I think we can play a big part, you know, in the prevention as well. And that's like I mentioned earlier, being part of the conversation with these other service groups, whether it's public health, human services, the mental health facilities and the hospitals, and being part of that collaborative that is out there and working hard to prevent these or minimizing it. You know, we have, you know, drug officers, and we can't arrest our way out of this, right? You know, we're going to do our part and we're going to enforce our drug laws, but, you know, I think that's how we've been doing it, you know, because that's all we've known. And, you know, go out there, arrest the bad guys. But these bad guys are again, our brothers, our sisters, our moms, our dads. And they didn't wake up wanting to be a drug addict. They found themselves in that situation through whatever circumstances. So I think along with the enforcement piece, we need to have them resources that, you know, we can hold them accountable for their charge, but at the same time get them in contact with the services they need to, you know, so this doesn't happen again. And it has such an effect on the community, you know, from the resource aspect of tax dollars to just the family breakdowns and the people and the kids and all those who are affected. And, you know, I'm very passionate about that because we've all seen people who have been negatively affected by the drug problem. And again, the sheriff's office needs to be, and all law enforcement needs to be part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our final question now comes from the public again. Given the authority and independence afforded to law enforcement, officers and supervisors are tasked with a great deal of responsibility in their roles. How important is accountability in law enforcement? And Chief Berggren, I believe it is your turn to go first.
Well, I believe it's very important. It all boils down to that you have the public's trust and confidence, and that starts with accountability. And again, kind of to repeat what I said earlier, it starts with hiring. You got to make sure that you're hiring quality people that share the same core values that you do, that your organization does. I truly believe you learn more in life from your mistakes than your successes. And I've always told our officers, if you go out and you make a mistake, that's okay. Just, you know, be willing to admit that you made a mistake. And I think that that goes back to the integrity piece. But these, like I said, these officers are out there. They're dealing with people's constitutional rights. They're taking away their freedoms. And accountability, trust, and integrity, you know, it cannot be questioned. It's just that powerful of characteristics that is needed in law enforcement. And again, I think it starts at the top. I have to hold myself to a higher standard than anybody else that works in my organization. And I believe if you're a strong leader like that and you have those strong beliefs, that everyone in your organization is going to strive to achieve that high standard that you set.
Thank you. Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons.
You know, there is no way to get around accountability. We work for the people, and yes, we make mistakes. And you know, as leaders of our departments, we hold our officers accountable. You know, and with that, knowing that, you know, we all do make mistakes, but it's what we do after that. It doesn't take long to lose the public's trust by not being honest, forthright with them. Again, accountability is critical to this operation or to this organization. And, you know, I think, again, it's part of the culture that I talked about earlier. You know, officers aren't going to allow unacceptable behavior. And it doesn't matter if it's in the jail, on the street, or in our office. If things are going on that shouldn't be, they get reported and they get dealt with. And you know, the integrity piece is so huge. And when we're out dealing with the public, you need to know that we have your best interests and we're going to do the right thing and, make sure that you're protected. And, it's that simple. Accountability is very important.
Thank you. Chief Hobie, you've already touched on this in a previous answer, but your thoughts?
No, I'm glad to answer a little bit more about that. Accountability obviously is a very important part of why I'm running for Ottertail County Sheriff. It didn't take me long in law enforcement to realize the great responsibility that's entrusted to us. We, like Chief Berggren said, are protecting we're upholding the Constitution. There are laws, there are rules that we need to follow. If we expect you to follow the laws of this state and this country, then we also need to as well. Being a chief for 10 years, have seen my share of government action and things like that. Why accountability is so important to me is because sometimes we don't know what the government is, why they're doing what they're doing. We see little bits here and there, and we get really confused on what's going on. When I'm talking about accountability, it's not just for our actions on the street or when we're having interactions with people, but accountability for why we're doing what we're doing. What is the gain for spending this amount of money in any scenario? And so I think being transparent with the public, because we do work for you and you tax dollars are paying for everything we're deciding on, I think being the public, you need to know why we're doing it so you better understand. Accountability for actions, yes, that is very important to me as well. That is why my leadership style brings that to the front so that people know what I expect of them. And then accountability again for how we spend that money that we receive to operate, and make sure that we're doing what we can and best spend it, and that the rewards that we get outweigh the cost.
I want to thank you, gentlemen, for your patience and good natures. We've navigated some difficult questions this evening. At this time, we'll allow each candidate 2 minutes to provide a closing statement. Maintaining our rotation, I believe that honor falls first to Chief Berggren.
Well, thank you. Again, I look at this opportunity is really to better serve the public. I'd like to see not only the sheriff's office improve, but I also would like to see us improve service and our relationships with the local police departments. I've said before, at the end of the day, when you call 911, you don't care what color the uniform the officer shows up in, if it's blue or brown or maroon. When you call for help, you just want help. And that's one thing that I would really be striving to do, is just really kind of solidify the strong working relationship with all law enforcement agencies in the county. The other part, the current sheriff, Brian Schluter, and I, we've been friends well over 20 years. In the last decade, I can't think of a major case that's occurred either in town or out in the county that he and I haven't sat down and discussed. When we've had issues, I've been over to his office bouncing problems off of him, and he's done the same with me. I think with my 25 years of experience, my knowledge of the area, I think I would be the best candidate to offer a smooth transition into the sheriff's office, and as I said, make the changes that need to be made. And like I said, a lot of them they're not about internal issues as much as they are external issues, the problems that our communities are facing and how we need to address those as an organization.
Thank you, Chief Berggren. Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things tonight, and a lot of different challenges that law enforcement is facing, especially in Ottertail County. Like I said, I'm very fortunate to have been part of this organization for the last 18 years. And I've had some influence on some of the things that have gone on and the way we've handled some of the things. And as we move forward, the way we deal with certain issues, our drug issues, our mental health issues, we need to change them a little bit. The enforcement piece is very important, but it's also important to get in front of that versus being reactive. So I think that's very important. If there was a lot of issues going on within our department, it'd be real easy to say, I'd like to change this and I'd like to change that. But there's just not. There's improvements, of course. We reevaluate all the time what we can do better, and what we're excelling at, we continue to do that. And so I would continue to work hard, provide the service that you expect with our professionally high-trained staff, whether it's in our jail or our office or out on the streets, the people that you meet. And the relationships that we've built, I think we can strengthen them. I think we've got a lot of great relationships already with our police departments. We train. We've got a training consortium, and we invite all the local agencies to come in and benefit from our training. And I think that helps from the street level up to the administration level. So our officers are all on the same page of what needs to be done and when an action needs to be taken, how to do that. So I will continue to be progressive and proactive in providing a service. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons. Chief Hobie.
As Chief Deputy Fitzgibbons said, we have talked about quite a bit. I've talked about what I want to bring, but I want to kind of cover again why I chose to run for Otter Tail County Sheriff. I think we can do better with relationships within the county. I think we can enhance those. I think we can work better together, and I also think that we can take the county as a whole, and I can use what I've learned in working in a smaller town to try to bring a little bit more of a personal law enforcement to each one of those communities. I believe, in Perham, where I work currently, I set goals, and I've achieved many of those goals that I've set. We've added a new officer, but it didn't just happen over time. That took years to do. So as sheriff, I want to set some goals, and I have some already, which I've talked about: being accountable, building relationships, working together, law enforcement agencies working together, as Kyle said earlier. And I want to expand those once we reach those. I, as it was pointed out earlier, am the youngest candidate, but I believe I have the drive to do that. I've proven it in Perham because I've achieved most of the goals that I've set out, and I want to do that same thing for Otter Tail County.
Thank you, Chief Hobie. I just want to observe that throughout this debate, none of our candidates have run more than a couple of seconds over time. If that's not self-discipline, I don't know what is. Ladies and gentlemen, and to those watching at home, that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's debate. I want to take one final opportunity to thank our sponsors, the Daily Journal and PEG Access Television, for making this event possible. I also want to thank our candidates for taking the time to be here today. And finally, a special thank you to everyone in attendance and at home for being involved in local government and the future of Otter Tail County. A quick reminder that primary elections will be held on Tuesday, August 14th. That date is only a few weeks away. And although who you vote for can have a lasting impact, please remember that it is the ability to vote in and of itself that so many great men and women have given their lives to protect. Thank you all again, and have a terrific night. For those interested in sticking around, you are welcome to remain a while longer to meet and greet the candidates. Please, one more round of applause. Thank you. I wasn't watching.